Welcome back to our channel USA's Dark Secrets, where we explore the untold stories of relationships, heartbreaks, and the unexpected twists of life. I still remember the day everything began to unravel. It wasn't one big moment, but a series of small ones that chipped away at my trust. My wife and I had always been close. We laughed together, shared everything, and supported each other through thick and thin. Or at least, that's what I thought. It started subtly. She became distant, less affectionate. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work had been tough for both of us, and life has a way of making you forget to nurture the little things. But weeks turned into months, and her excuses became routine. "I'm tired," she'd say. "Not tonight." I tried to be understanding. I gave her space, asked if she needed help or wanted to talk. She always brushed it off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Deep down, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to push her away. Then one night, out of the blue, she came to me with an idea that caught me completely off guard. "Let's have a baby," she said, her voice unusually chipper. "A baby? Now?" The suggestion felt like a slap in the face after months of rejection. I tried to mask my confusion, but inside, alarms were going off. Why now? Why, after all this time of barely speaking, barely touching, would she want to start a family? I smiled and played along. "A baby sounds amazing," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. But my gut told me something was off. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice changes in her behavior. She was suddenly more concerned about her health, eating differently, avoiding alcohol. And then there was the way she'd place her hand on her stomach absent-mindedly, as if cradling something. It hit me like a ton of bricks. She might already be pregnant. But here's the thing, if she was, I knew it couldn't be mine. I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof, something undeniable. So, I started paying closer attention. I checked her phone when she left it unattended, and sure enough, there were messages. Messages from someone she had saved under a fake name. The conversations were flirtatious at first, but then I found the ones that confirmed my worst fears. She had been seeing someone else, and they had been planning this. My heart broke, but my mind went into overdrive. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. Instead, I decided to quietly plan my revenge, a revenge she would never see coming. I started by playing the role of the perfect husband. I supported her newfound baby fever, even suggesting we start documenting our journey to parenthood. I set up cameras around the house under the guise of creating memories for the future. What she didn't know was that I was using those cameras to capture evidence of her deceit. I also contacted a lawyer. With the texts, the videos, and everything I had gathered, I built an airtight case. Divorce wasn't just about ending the marriage, it was about making sure I walked away with my dignity intact and without her dragging me down financially or emotionally. The day I confronted her was one I'll never forget. I waited until she was gushing about baby clothes she'd been looking at online. I sat her down and calmly placed a stack of papers on the table, printouts of her texts, screenshots, and even photos of her meeting him. Her face went pale. "What is this?" she stammered. "You tell me," I replied, my voice steady. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" "But it's not mine." She tried to deny it, her words tumbling out in a frantic mess, but there was no way out. The evidence was overwhelming. "I trusted you," I said, standing up and looking her in the eyes. "And you threw it all away. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed everything we built together." I handed her the divorce papers. "It's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You can explain this to him." She begged and pleaded, but I had made up my mind. I walked out that day and didn't look back. The divorce was swift, thanks to the mountain of evidence I had collected. She tried to fight it, but her lover wasn't willing to step up and support her, and she had no choice but to concede. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. There were tough days, but each one was a step toward freedom. I reconnected with friends, pursued passions I had set aside, and started to feel like myself again. One day, I received a message from her. She apologized, saying she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She wanted forgiveness, but I knew her apology wasn't about me, it was about her trying to ease her own guilt. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something she could demand, it was something I had to find on my own terms. Looking back, I realized that her betrayal, as painful as it was, gave me the strength to build a better life. It taught me how to trust myself, how to recognize my worth, and how to never settle for less than I deserve. As the months turned into a year, my life became something I hardly recognized. I had grown in ways I didn't think were possible. The pain of betrayal was still a memory, but it no longer weighed on me. I was thriving, mentally, emotionally, and even professionally. One evening, while I was out with friends, I met someone. She was different, grounded, warm, and genuine. Her laughter was contagious, her smile unassuming. Unlike the toxic facade I had lived with for so long, she was honest, real, and kind. We started slow, getting to know each other without rushing into anything. I was cautious, but she never pushed, never made me feel like I had to explain myself. For the first time in years, I felt safe letting my guard down. Meanwhile, I occasionally heard whispers about my ex-wife through mutual acquaintances. Her life hadn't been easy since our divorce. She was raising the child on her own, and the man she had risked everything for was long gone. There was no satisfaction in knowing she was struggling, only a quiet sense of relief that her decisions were no longer my burden to bear. One day, out of the blue, she reached out again. It had been a long time since our last contact, and her message was different this time. There were no apologies or pleas for reconciliation. Instead, she asked to meet, saying she wanted to talk about closure. I debated whether to respond but decided it was worth hearing her out, not for her sake, but for mine. We agreed to meet at a neutral place, a small cafe we used to visit together. When she walked in, she looked like a shadow of the woman I had once known. The confidence she used to carry had been replaced by something quieter, more reflective. She sat across from me and spoke softly. "I know I've said I'm sorry before, but I've never fully explained myself," she began. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand." She went on to explain how lost she had felt during those months of distance, how she'd sought comfort in the wrong place, how she thought she could fix things by forcing a future that didn't include the truth. "I ruined us," she said, tears streaming down her face. "And I've had to live with that every day." I listened without interrupting, but I didn't feel the anger or sadness I once had. Instead, I felt nothing. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that showed I had truly moved on. When she finished, I took a deep breath and spoke. "I appreciate you sharing this," I said. "But the truth is, I've already made peace with what happened. I've moved forward, and I hope you can do the same." Her shoulders slumped, but she nodded. "I just wanted you to know that you deserved better," she said. With that, we parted ways. I walked away feeling lighter, knowing that chapter of my life had finally closed for good. Back home, the woman who had become my rock greeted me with a smile. She didn't ask about the meeting, and I didn't feel the need to explain. She trusted me, and that was enough. As I sat with her that evening, watching the sun set, I realized something profound. The life I had now wasn't just something I had stumbled into. It was something I had fought for, something I had built from the ground up after everything had been taken from me. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the revenge, it had all led me here, to a place of peace and love I never thought I'd find again. The months rolled on, and life settled into a rhythm that felt natural and fulfilling. My new relationship had blossomed into something truly special. We weren't just partners, we were a team. She didn't just love me, she respected me, supported me, and made me feel like the best version of myself. One evening, As we walked hand in hand along the beach, she turned to me with a look of quiet intensity. "I feel like I've found my forever with you," she said softly. Her words caught me off guard, but in the best way possible. I smiled, pulling her close. "I feel the same," I said. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." As the weeks turned into years, our relationship only deepened. I proposed to her during a quiet hike in the mountains, just the two of us surrounded by nature. Her eyes filled with tears as she said yes, and at that moment, I knew my life had come full circle. The wedding was a small, intimate affair, just close friends and family. As I stood at the altar, watching her walk down the aisle, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and the pain I had endured now felt like a distant memory, a necessary storm that had cleared the way for a brighter future. Not long after, we started our own family. The first time I held our child in my arms, I was overwhelmed with emotions I didn't even know I could feel. This was what love was supposed to look like, pure, unselfish, and true. Occasionally, thoughts of my past would resurface, but they no longer held any power over me. They were just reminders of how far I had come and how much I had grown. One day, while I was out running errands, I ran into my ex-wife. She was sitting alone at a coffee shop, staring out the window with a distant look in her eyes. She didn't notice me at first, and I debated whether to approach her. But something inside me urged me to, not out of anger or malice, but out of closure. When she looked up and saw me, her face registered surprise, then a flicker of something else, maybe regret. We exchanged polite greetings, and for a brief moment, we talked. She mentioned that life had been hard, but she was doing her best. I told her about my family, my wife, and our child. She smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're happy," she said, her voice soft. "Thank you," I replied. "I hope you find happiness too." As I walked away, I realized that I felt no bitterness, no resentment. What she had done had shaped me, but it didn't define me. Back home, I hugged my wife and child tightly, grateful for the life I now had. Every day was a testament to resilience, to the idea that even the worst moments can lead to something beautiful if you're willing to keep moving forward. In the end, my story wasn't about revenge or even betrayal. It was about finding strength in the face of adversity and building a life that was truly worth living.